questions you may have by typing your questions into the chat box. And we will be browsing the questions throughout the panel discussion, and we'll have a dedicated time at the end of the panel to answer all your questions. Okay, so my name is Steve Germano. I work as a director here at the UNIFI company. Very happy to be speaking with everyone today and discussing strategies and tips and tricks on content libraries. I'm very happy today to be joined by two brilliant minds in our industry, Nancy McClure of Interior Architects and Brian Nickel of Harvey's Heating and Plumbing. Nancy, Brian, thanks for joining us today. How are you both doing?
Doing great. Good morning.
Doing wonderful. Thanks, Steve.
Great, great. So Nancy, much of our audience probably knows you personally from all your great work and interactions at RTC, Autodesk University, and other industry events. And you also work for a very progressive firm who's really pushing the boundaries and limits of BIM with fun technologies like VR, just to name a few. Can you give us a brief overview of your firm and your role in the company?
Sure. IA Interior Architects is a international firm servicing a number of regional and global enterprise clients. We are an architecture firm, but we focus on interiors. And we have a lot of global alliances all across the globe, so we're very extensive reach.
Wonderful. Thanks for that, Nancy. Brian, much of our audience probably knows you also from your awesome BIM blog, the Revit Saver. Everyone be sure to check out Brian's blog at therevitsaver.blogspot.com. Really great, tons of great information on there, solutions to really complicated Revit problems that Brian really graciously shares with the industry instead of hoarding that wonderful knowledge to himself. So your automation and customization work with Harvey's has been really inspiring. Can you give us a quick overview of Harvey's, what you do there, and your role?
Sure. So I work for Harvey's Plumbing and Heating, mechanical designer. We've worked on a lot of Yellowstone Club Resort high-end residential homes that range anywhere between 6,000 square feet all the way up to 30,000 square feet. And so my job here has been kind of standardizing our equipment, standardizing our process, and kind of grouping items together into those rooms so that it makes our process a lot more simpler to communicate to a lot of the tradesmen in the field. So that's a little bit about my role at Harvey's.
Wonderful. Thanks for that, Brian. So we're going to start off today talking about BIM content management strategies, some tips and tricks. We're going to go over kind of some of the key things that we want to be conscious of as we're starting to develop a BIM content strategy. So having a solid content library strategy is really one of the beginning steps in implementing Revit and BIM technologies in our firms, and it's often one that really evolves over time as we learn sometimes painstakingly what works and what doesn't work for our particular firms and for us as an industry in general. And so we're going to cover a couple different topics along that route today. So understanding the scope of your company and what your company will need is a great first step. Does your firm have multiple offices or different regional needs? Is your company an international firm that will require both metric and imperial content? You know, what about different languages even? We often see firms that have not only just English named families, but maybe Chinese character for their Asian client or the Asian offices, French for Canada and parts of Paris or France. So the languages can play a role even. And then, do we have imperial metric needs? How many, and also another big key factor is how many Revit versions or version years do we need to support? With the need to support multiple Revit version years, a challenge that often arises is duplication of content. And in this small example below here, you can see we're only supporting 3 Revit version years, and we've got a couple of different library sectors set up for the Americas. We have a U.S. and Canada. And very often you're going to find a lot of duplication of content within these libraries. And in this small example here, we would almost have 3 of the same family in 3 different locations. This kind of creates more overhead for BIM management staff to keep the libraries in sync. So another key strategy area is how are we going to populate our content library? Where are we going to start? What's the basis of our library? How are we going to start to supply content into this library? It's very common for firms to start with the Autodesk Revit out-of-the-box libraries, take that content and start to tweak it and tweak that content to meet our firm standards. Are we going to use manufacturer content at all? This is a fundamental question that many firms have different answers to. If we are, which brands do we prefer, and how are we going to provide access for this content to our design teams? Are we going to allow them to just download freely from the web? What quality control processes are we going to put in place to kind of mitigate risk of someone downloading something that could be detrimental to our projects? There's also a lot of third-party providers that create these content packs, which come with not only content but templates and schedules even in some cases, which may accelerate your implementation. And there's a lot of great packs out there. ICS has some great ones. ENG Works has some great ones, and there's many other third parties that provide them across the globe. So definitely suggest you guys check some of those out as well. And then the last option is really, do we build our own library from scratch? And this option is obviously the most time-consuming, and it does cost the most investment, but it may offer the most consistent approach for our libraries as well. Okay, then getting into content naming conventions, and there's many different ways to develop a content naming convention. One little trick that we see firms use very commonly is to use a prefix, for example, an underscore character at the beginning of the family names, or some other symbol that will always make your families, your company families, jump to the top of the list inside the Revit browser. So there's many different ways we can look at content naming conventions. I think almost every firm probably has a little bit of their own unique flair of their own or their own style for a naming convention. The example we're seeing here is one that's publicly shared and contributed to from Revit Forum Online. If you have a chance to go check that out, it's a pretty well put together standard that may be a good starting place for you to consider. Okay, so this is where I'd like to ask our panel the first question here, and to Nancy, of course, ladies first. What unique requirements were most influential in defining and selecting a library management strategy for your organization?
Yeah, that was a real challenge for us because as an international firm, we have 18 plus and growing offices all across both the continental US and in Europe. And we have a lot of strategy partners in other areas of the globe too. So we are dealing with content that's both imperial and in metric, sometimes for the same client. And we need to make sure that all content upgrades and things that happen to it are readily accessible to all of our users. So we needed much more than a content filing system. What we really needed was a delivery system. We knew that. And we needed a delivery system that would minimize the amount of duplication that we would need, both just for our sanity of those of us that are managing it, but also just for consistency as well. And yeah, and our 19 offices are often collaborating on the same projects, or they're working on multiple projects for the same client. So they all need to get the most up-to-date information. We wanted to make sure that we had a single source of truth, and a standard duplicated server library type of system of hosting everything on your own network just was failing in that regard. And we knew that we wanted to look for a cloud servicing system, and we did find that with UNIFI, and there's lots of great benefits to that.
That's great. Thanks for that, Nancy. So with the file replication system, what were some of the downfalls that you guys were starting to encounter with that system?
Well, there was delays in the duplication, and then just also having to host all that content and just sheer quantities of data that we're talking about. I mean, as an interiors firm, we have a very broad breadth of content that we use. And although our content is wide rather than deep, meaning we don't have many families that have a multitude of types within them. But we literally have thousands of furniture and fixture families, and we are constantly looking at creating the most up-to-date elements. So we are bringing in a lot of content from manufacturers. We're having to make modifications to those to suit either our scheduling or to suit our visualization needs. So updates are constantly happening on that, and to have a time lag between our different offices that need to pull that information in, especially if they're on collaborative projects, that was a real challenge.
And, that's great. Well, thanks for that. Appreciate it. Brian, I asked the same question to you. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, now I'm going to just go ahead and add to the comment. We're a subcontracting firm. We're a smaller firm. We only have one office. We don't have 19. But through that, there's the struggles of initially setting up a content library and getting your users to set it up across the firm as a standard. And so first, before I was able to identify which library management strategy was right for our organization, I needed to figure out what the problem was. The problem was a list of items that each user had been struggling with, and these problems consisted of sifting through server files and locations that made their productivity levels sink when placing objects into their Revit files. My first plan of attack to this problem was to find a solution. Many people had workflows or shared server tips to solve it, but I wanted something faster. I had tried remedies such as shared links or adding tabs to quick access bars in Windows, but that in itself was laborious and not the right approach. We ended up stumbling upon UNIFI through our searches for help and decided to try it out. I started it out as the test subject and had a few initial problems that were addressed by the UNIFI crew. The team addressed these problems so quickly, and we were experienced a much better trial period of the software to kind of get it going. And this ended up addressing all those unique requirements for making searching flawless and expedient, and ultimately led the trial into a suitable replacement for the old, tiresome, bothersome, and immensely time-consuming way of trying to manage our content.
Well, that's great. Thanks for that, Brian. So let's start off with the next question with you, Brian. How did you go about implementing a library management strategy, and how did you test it to make sure that it was being successful?
Well, the next hurdle was definitely to implement and test the library management strategy, because everyone understands how difficult it is to roll out changes to workflows or additional tasks to end users. The way I was able to quickly and easily introduce this to our company's users was by adding their names to our UNIFI library first, which in turn sent out all the instructions for installation and setup, and led to the ease of walking through our team to the installation process. After all of our users had these items installed and running, I was able to explain to them the ease of its user interface and how it would make their lives easier, finding objects through a quick search at the top of the bar and through filters that would allow them to sift through what they were looking for. It also banked off on the categories the Revit built in, and that made this kind of rollout a lot easier.
That's great. And so, Nancy, you had a little bit of a larger rollout strategy and challenge ahead of you with the amount of people that you had to deploy your strategy to. Do you want to talk a little bit about your process and how you went about testing your library management strategy?
Sure, Steve. Sure. So yes, we also went through a test period where we installed the system onto a smaller subset of users' systems, and we pulled a user group team that was on some of our most rigorous projects, rigorous in terms of managing content and having a strict standards for those, and got a lot of feedback from them. So the feedback loop was really critical. So we had them test out our approaches to sorting, naming, tagging, all of that to see what was working and what wasn't, and making sure that searches were pulling back usable content lists and things like that. And that feedback loop was really critical for us. It helped us refine how we were going to be advising people in terms of giving them guidelines, and we definitely wrote guidelines for teams to upload and for teams to manage it. And because we have so much content and across so many offices, that we knew that we needed to have a very flexible organization to the content. So we have a large pool that all the content goes into, but it also has the ability for us to assign content into multiple libraries, so to speak, so that we have client-specific libraries and team-specific libraries if needed, if that's really critical. And it's very flexible to add and subtract content from that. So it made sure that that elements were being able to be found across this big pool of content that we had. And the feedback that our testing teams gave us, we were able to refine our processes, but we also gave that feedback back to the UNIFI developers as well, and many of those comments were incorporated into the user interface, which was a fantastic relationship to have.
That's great. And so what kind of approaches did you take to continually successfully introduce it to your user base?
Oh, as far as introducing it to the user base, well, that was lots of internal promotion. Yeah, so after the testing period, we did roll it out to the entire firm. General announcements were made, but a lot of that, I mean, people don't change their ways very easily, particularly when they had a process that they may have customized on their own because there wasn't a global system, and now that there is, we really needed to try to persuade people to change that process. So in addition to making broadcasts across the firm's intranet, we also really studied the stats, the user stats for the first quarter, and we sort of gamified it a bit. So we, across our 19 offices, we looked for, and this is a great example of the type of information that we were able to get back of user statistics from the UNIFI system. That allowed us to track by office who were the individual users that were really proactive, who were the people that were contributing the most content from the libraries that they had regionally, And then we did some rewarding systems. So we had a really great collaboration of an interior architects and UNIFI T-shirt that we created and sent it out to the top 2 users of each office, and that really raised the visibility of the tool across the office. And it also it sort of piqued the interest of those that were sort of reluctant users or late adopters to it.
Yeah, I still wear my T-shirt today. So yeah,
it was such a hit.
yeah, everyone loves T-shirts, don't they? And if you can, you're rolling out new software is always a challenge, and like you said, people always sometimes are resistant to change, and it's great to, I really enjoyed watching how you guys approached that challenge and really made it fun, right? Made it into a game, made it into a challenge, and it seemed to be very successful at your firm. So I thought you guys did a great job there. And so, Brian, you had a little bit different approach at your firm. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you had successfully introduced UNIFI to your users?
Yeah, basically just, I asked them how they enjoyed searching the server for the files. I mean, we had millions and millions of different, we're an MEP firm, so we have all these millions of different pieces of content that we have to go through and filter on our end to match our family template standards. And it was driving them nuts to constantly have to go in, dig through the server, find something versus just being able to type in what they were looking for and having it appear. I mean, it really was kind of an easy sell because they're not doing all that digging.
That's great. So it was really about the ease of use and just the speed for them that kind of kept them engaged.
Yeah, and I mean, just them being able to request content through us and kind of, if something's not there, just kind of communicating what's not there and how we could get it to them and just kind of working collaboratively as a team. I mean, that was ultimately what led to the success of optimizing that library and kind of getting it rolled out quicker and having people actually adopt it.
And so as you had this strategy, as you rolled this platform out to your users, what didn't work, and what were the ramifications? How long did it take you to really find out that, we've got a challenge here and we need to switch gears?
Generally, what was happening in the beginning, because we started out so early with the add-in, it was generally just a few of the application failures that we'd come across, and then we would just log in on the idea station and just effectively communicate that to the team. And within a week or 2 weeks, your team would make those fixes for us, and eventually it just was completely stable, and everybody on the back end was happy because the response time was so quick. It wasn't one of those things, well, let me go look it up online and find out an answer, down the road. It's like, no, let me send this out to somebody that's going to fix it. They'll get it fixed, and then we'll be able to do our jobs a lot more appropriately and quicker.
Right. Yeah, I wish there was a world where software didn't have bugs, but it's great to have good quality support and a team that answers the phone for you, for sure.
Right.
And so Nancy, I'd ask you the same question. What did you guys figure out that didn't work with your strategy, and how did you go about approaching and finding a solution?
Well, for us, a big part of the strategy was just getting all the content that the different offices had sort of pocketed away in their own cache up into the system, and we encouraged that. We actually have a sort of a distributed hierarchy of our users, and so there were certain people in each office that really had been tasked with that role of finding that content, encouraging to come up onto the system, but we really found that wasn't really happening as readily as we hoped, and so part of that was we started to actually improve the content that was up there, and to the point that the content that we updated and upgraded was superior to the content that they had elsewhere. And we worked really hard to make those systems really efficient and really easy to use and consistent to use. So it took actually a lot of us modifying our content to entice people to actually come to that source, just to get them to change their process. So that was one of our real big learning curves, is just understanding that we really needed to up the value of the content itself to encourage people to switch to this new system of delivery. But we also but one of the lessons we also learned is we couldn't just take away the old system. So we couldn't like just search through the servers and delete people's pockets of families, because that would be really, really disruptive. So we wanted the flow to happen as the team saw value in it. So continuously emphasizing that there were benefits to the system, both proven benefits and just emotional benefits of being able to find things much quicker. The transition was much more organic. And it was by letting it happen over a certain period of time and encouraging and rewarding was a way to sort of not make it seem like a forceful change, but make it seem like a choice change. And that was a really big turning point for bringing the adoption along.
And that's an interesting point too. Is that takes time, right? Just making that hard switch sometimes is not, can be detrimental. So how long would you say it really took for the majority of your teams to kind of gravitate towards the higher quality content that you guys were providing in the UNIFI platform compared to what they were squirreling away on their own desktops or local servers?
I would say it would probably be about 3 to 4 months or so before we really saw a lot of these where the use indicators were clear that people were turning to the system first.
And those use indicators, was that primarily from the analytics you were able to see in the system, or how were you really keeping track of, hey, what is our actual usage out there?
Yeah, analytics were a huge part of that. So being able to see those user statistics was key. Also, just the quality of what we were getting as out of the end product of our documentation was much better, and we could see that was clearly because of the improvements we'd made to the content itself. So we knew they were getting it from the right source.
Gotcha. That's great. And so we'll start off the next question here with you, Nancy. How did you ensure that all your content got into that library? I'm sorry, we already just kind of covered that, didn't we? We'll go to that question here. Yeah. So how do you maintain and continuously optimize your library management strategy here and ensure that you're delivering the maximum value to users? And what does that ongoing process look like at IA today?
Yeah, it's actually pretty broad spread because, again, we focus on interiors, so we are getting a good chunk of our content from manufacturers. With our strategy, we have a number of libraries that are very client-specific, and that's useful. But we also knew that because we were such a diverse team and with so many offices and so many headcount of people accessing this, that it couldn't really be managed by a single core team. So we have specified librarians who manage the content for these particular subsets. And they are both vetting the content that they receive from manufacturers. We've given them pretty strict guidelines on how to do that. But we also have, through UNIFI, have an arrangement where UNIFI is creating some of the content that we need. So since we're bringing back cut sheets of the most current things that are being released at NeoCon, and we immediately want to start getting them into our models, particularly because we rely so much on visualization. I mean, we want it in our VR models as quickly as possible. Working with UNIFI to create content for us was a great way for us to control quality, because we were able to establish our own customized family templates that are the starting point for any piece of content that's created for us from a manufacturer's cut sheet. So it's a combination of getting data from the manufacturer, but also us controlling the creation of the content through our relationship with UNIFI, and having the internal teams manage their own content libraries and see how that's working through their system. So they have control from the very beginning of the content being created, but then they also have a lot of feedback on the accuracy and the consistency of it across their projects. And that's getting them to see how much time savings that was for them at the end of the day was really a key to making sure that the content really is reviewed and updated.
And what's the mentality shift as someone, one of your designers begins to start to rely on someone creating that content for you, with internal, external, and just the ease of being able to, hey, let me just request and have somebody else do this content creation for me, and I can stay focused on my design. Have you seen a mental shift in people as they start to get used to that service? And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's been a little bit of an ebb and a flow. So it took us actually a while to encourage people to use that system, and I think they were just accustomed to searching for content on the web, which is very time-consuming and not always very fruitful. So our point of saying that you can get the content that UNIFI created to our standards in a much more manageable amount of time, which also frees up your time to keep focused on the project, was a key part of that. We still see ebbs and flows in how that will work, but during crunches like after NeoCon, when there's a ton of new information and new material that's out there, we definitely see an uptick in the use of that.
That's great. That's great. Hey, everyone, I just want to remind everyone, feel free to start submitting your questions right now. We have a couple coming through already. Please go ahead and submit your questions as we'll be following up and getting into answering all your questions in a couple minutes here. Okay, and so thanks for that, Nancy. That makes a ton of sense. It's always a challenge as you roll out new services and new products to firms. How are my teams going to accept this? How are they going to react to this? Is this are they going to get behind this and really see the value? And so it's very interesting to hear how that process has gone and that journey's been at IA there. And so, Brian, can you talk a little bit about, how did you make sure that folks in your company didn't squirrel away content on their desktops or local drives? And then also talk a little bit about your continuous optimization of your content and some of the really exciting things that you're doing at Harvey's to kind of tie together your product data and information.
Sure. I'm going to start with the first question on how do I not get people to squirrel away items on their desktop. And that's by simply communicating an efficient company standard, having standards in place, by letting our guys know, like, hey, this is not the right place to put your file, just having that common understanding, ensuring that all content gets into our libraries by identifying what is good content and what is garbage, communication between our team and amongst our company. If there's a request for an item, UNIFI notifies all the content admins, and those people can just get that resolved with our company standards and family template files. It's all about communication and process and being able to have the back end of things managed and resolved. Frees up a lot of the monotonous time trying to find content on our hard drives. Therefore, they're not going to go put it somewhere it shouldn't be and try to pull something from where it shouldn't be. They're just relying inside of that platform. Then moving into sort of how do I maintain and continuously optimize my library strategies. I let UNIFI handle and maintain that. In the past, when structuring a library, it was always a struggle to figure out where to put these items and how I wanted to structure the folders. I always thought I had the right organization strategy without an external application, but it always would turn out being a struggle explaining the structure to the end users. So communication of where those files are, how those files exist. In the MEP world of things, we're dealing with millions of pieces of content, and organizing them in miles of folders wasn't the answer. The maximum value to us is that UNIFI provides a content solution that's able to quickly search it. So i.e. the groups that we've set up, we have assemblies that our master plumber sets up, and he builds those out, and then we form them into groups, and then we're able to mass roll those out into a library classified as plumbing assemblies. And our users are then able to effectively take the isometric drawings from our master plumbers, because we're not master plumbers, and then be able to pull those pictures down from UNIFI and put them into a project. So that was really the benefit for us in terms of the unique thinking in terms of how do we get these groups rolled out to our people, how do those people pull the data in, how do I embed the data into the mechanical equipment specifications. So when our mechanical guys are telling us, oh, we're going to use 7 of those water furnace heat pumps, where's the data associated to it? So what I've done is I've actually embedded the hyperlinks into the mechanical equipment, and that way when I place them, it actually ties to A360, and all the specification data is there for our tradesmen in the field, as well as our mechanical guys. So that's a little bit of the approach that we took. But,
that's a really interesting item that you've done there. So you've got data and PDFs and spec sheets stored on A360, and you're linking that in with a URL parameter directly into the content and keeping that data linked with it. What do you guys do as that product gets changed, or maybe the SKU gets obsoleted, or product data changes in that PDF? Are you updating both locations, both the PDF on A360 as well as the content in UNIFI? Can you talk about how are you keeping this stuff in sync as time goes on?
Yeah, that's the beauty of and we use A360 Team to hold those specifications, and what happens is when we put a link in there, if we archive a lot of people are probably thinking, oh, well, that's crazy to embed a hyperlink, because what if that link breaks, or what if what if something changes? Well, the simple answer is that with A360 Team, when you archive a file, the links don't expire and they don't break. They're there to exist. But if the product specification updates, we can pull that link, download the file, update the link, and just move on to the next. A majority of the stuff in our world, with pipe fittings and pipe, those specifications don't generally change. It's more manufacturer specific by equipment. So, I mean, really, it's most of the time it's a one-time thing. If we move to a different piece of equipment, we have somebody build the family, embed the spec sheet, and it's ready to rock and roll. I mean, the turnover isn't critical, and it ensures that when we put that information from all of the content into building ops, out to kind of, track our equipment out in the field, so that when our service technicians are there, that they have access to that spec data. So it's all part of a workflow, to where if we're, we just check that specification data, and providing that nothing has changed, like you've said, which 99.9% of the time it doesn't change. But when it does, we just build a new family, put it on UNIFI, and take down the old one. I mean, it's really a quick process for our firm to do that when dealing with mechanical equipment.
Yeah, it's a really intriguing topic. Is how do we incorporate non-BIM personnel into the workflow, right? How do we share this information and collaborate with this information? And Autodesk and A360 and some of the field different products that they have there are great at getting that data out to the field. And how does this information relate back to our libraries and the designs that we're doing? And I think it's really interesting, the workflow that you have, where UNIFI doesn't have to be installed with Revit, right? It's a standalone, and so you've got your senior plumbing engineers going through and selecting from the assemblies, or AKA model groups as a Revit element type, if you will, what assemblies to go into the projects, and then that information is getting passed to you, and you guys are inserting that. Can you talk a little bit? How does that workflow work
Sure.
at your firm today?
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll launch it on our master plumbers' computers, and then also on our master heating technicians' computers. And what they're able to do is they're able to request content from my team, from our design department. And basically, they punch in through a form what information they need in that family that's going to be embedded down through the process of that entire deliverable to the client, to that end goal of that deliverable. And so what they're able to do is give us the specifications that we need, because 99.9% of the time, we don't know the exact piece of equipment, because there's millions of different pieces of equipment. So this allows it to narrow it down, so that when they're telling us what we need to build, it's being built accurately. The data is being put in a specific location on A360. It's tied. Once the project's completed and collaborated through the cloud, all of our plumbers can then access the A360 model. They can also access all of the specification data, because they have the hyperlinks that have carried through the family building process through UNIFI into Revit, and then out through A360 into building ops to our end deliverable of that client. It's definitely helped our tradesmen out a lot, because they don't have to sit on their phones searching for that exact model number, finding, it's all right there from the model. And so
that's great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah, it's a very, very exciting implementation of the product there, and being able to connect this product data and keep it up to date, I think, is really, really, really an intriguing topic.
Yeah.
So,
Steve,
go ahead, sir.
I'd like to throw in there, just looking at that example of Harvey's model groups, is again, when you're looking at delivering content to your teams, it isn't just families, it isn't just RFAs. In many cases, it's those complete assemblies, which is a challenge to do once you've taken it from the individual component level to collections and things like that. And using UNIFI, one of the key points of us selecting UNIFI was because we were able to use a library system that would address much more than just the individual components. So to be able to include details, drafting views, information that way through this same delivery system, including systems families, which has always been a challenge. And how do you deliver out systems families out across the team? And getting the statistics, again, was able for us to see which content items have been downloaded frequently. And so we were able to make sure that those items were included in our template and remove out all the other packs and content that wasn't necessarily needed. So not only was the system able to streamline our content library management, it also began to streamline some of our other processes, including our template formation and delivery of all of that content.
Yeah, it's really interesting about the model groups. I had a customer show us a couple of weeks ago. They had a whole entire bathroom designs done, and for large commercial spaces for typical his and her bathroom alignments for commercial buildings or conference room halls, and they were just model groups comprised of system families for the walls and flooring, and then regular families for the stalls and the toilet fixtures. And it was comprised of maybe 40, 50, 60 different elements, and that was a single search and single click and insert for their design teams, where once the model group is in that model, they can then explode that and start to massage the pieces. So I think it's a very interesting topic of how do we deliver content to our users and getting creative in that process and saying, hey, can we get that content to them as quickly as possible to help make them more efficient, right? Makes our firm more efficient. So yeah, it's a very, very, very interesting topic, and it's an area that firms can really explore and how to be more efficient with their designers. So, okay, with that, I think we'll roll into the question and answer section here. Please submit your questions. We've got a bunch that have come through so far. Let's see. So let's start off with this one. Here's a good question. How big are the teams that manage UNIFI and the content within your firms? And Nancy, we'll go to you first.
Sure. Well, we have an initial team, a core team of 5 that is in charge of writing out the processes for it. So as far as establishing what the workflow will be. But in terms of actually managing the content, that's very distributed. And as I said, we have librarians that are assigned for each of those client-specific libraries in the system. So we've trained them. They have responsibilities. They have accountability for the content that's within their group. So a core set that defines the processes and a distributed team that maintains those standards.
Great. And Brian, what about at your firm there?
So I'm at a smaller firm. I don't have 18 offices. I have 1 office. But I'm mostly kind of the master thinker of, our process of how does UNIFI work and how can I get it to connect. But with being the master thinker, I need to be able to listen to other thinkers in our office and be able to communicate, how is it most efficient for them to use the product in our office, and they communicate that to me, and we kind of collaboratively work together as a team to find out what that method is, and by getting everybody on board and on the same page, we're able to execute it flawlessly, honestly. I mean, we've gone through most of the problems. Probably took us about a month of just kind of drilling it out. So.
Wonderful. Okay, so we've got another one here. I think I can take this one. Will UNIFI have Revit 2017 toolbar similar to previous versions? Yes, absolutely it will. And Revit 2017 is something that's very close to being rolled out here. So, okay, next one here. How do you handle legacy content? For example, families that have the same name as the current family but are older and depreciated content. How do you handle that? So I guess we'll go, ladies first, we'll go with Nancy with that.
Sure. Well, because you're hosting this in the cloud and UNIFI is managing the versioning of the content, we just have a single family. So if a family is uploaded with the same name, it's replacing that previous version. And there is a way of tracking that. You can see the dates of those uploads, and you can also include comments into it. And that's actually been a big part of our vetting process as well. Again, with the librarians that are managing content that are specific to their teams, by putting notes in on what those updates are, And those notes are readily available to anyone who's looking at content within that library. They're able to see, hey, this piece of content had an update. Is that relevant to me? And it also prompts the question of, does that sort of change need to happen and push out across our broader content? So it's really been part of our feedback and part of integrating into our upgrading and maintaining standards of all of our content across the board. So based on the fact that most of our items are furniture and fixtures, not necessarily integrated systems such as Brian's team, an easy replacement is not unmanageable for us.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Is one of the features within UNIFI is that base file chart, and so Revit goes off the element name as the primary unique identifier. And so let's say that Autodesk comes out with a great feature for lighting fixture families, right, for 2018, and we want to take advantage of that. So we download all our lighting families, we add this new widget in, and we upload them all again. Well, they're all the same name. UNIFI recognizes that and says, okay, well, all these 2018 families have their same name. We're going to add them in, but they're still the same element. So everyone who's working in older versions of Revit are going to get the previous base file, and then everyone working in 2018 and forward will get that new base file that has that new widget added to it. So it's kind of a future-proofing system as well to be able to attempt to be flexible with any future changes that may come out as far as feature adds from Autodesk as well. So yeah, so it's a nice flexible system in that regard. Let's see. Brian, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think she hit it right on the head. You guys did a great job on that. So.
Okay, we have one other one here is on schedules and if we support them. Currently, the answer is no, something that's in development also, very highly requested item. So any other questions? See if any other questions come through here. Otherwise, we can move to wrap. We do have a couple people that looks like they are asking questions here coming through. Okay, so here's a new question. It says, I work at a large multi-office, multi-discipline firm. It was easy to get some offices and disciplines to see the value in UNIFI. How can I get the other disciplines and offices to see the value when I can't physically be there or know the content they want? That's a challenge. I think, Nancy, I'll let you touch on this being from a large,
yeah, I think
firm here.
It's always going to come down to communication. So if you're working in if you have people that are key people that you can communicate with across those other disciplines, letting them see the benefits that the team that has adopted the tool, whether it's increasing their efficiency or increasing the accuracy of their content and the consistency of what they're putting out, I would think that that's enough to actually get the other disciplines interested in at least knowing how this tool or how a different system of delivering can work for them. Now, their content might be quite different or their needs might be quite different, but just seeing the end results and seeing the benefits of that, I think every team is looking for ways to be more efficient. Every team is looking for ways to minimize the amount of rework and review that has to be done. So I think definitely promoting the benefits is going to at least start the conversation. Knowing what they'll need, that is going to require team meetings, is requiring for you to sit down and, as Brian has done, is get the feedback from those key users, be the one who's absorbing their process, finding out how it is that they need to find content, what is the key criteria that they're looking for, what are the key ways in which they're searching, and then begin to structure your systems to be able to address those.
Great. No, that's perfect. Yeah, it's a challenge to get people around the globe to all agree to anything, right? In our firms, in a large firm, it's a challenge. And I love the concept that IA really took with the promotion, right? Doing the promotions and the T-shirts and the great things that you guys did. We have other customers we've seen, international firms are doing very fun things like that. Someone took and did contests. They took a a piece of content, and they made a Where's Waldo contest, and it was actually Waldo's face on the content image, and they hid it in the libraries, and they said, okay, the first person to find this bit of content gets this prize. It was like a $25 gift card to Starbucks or something, and they had people finding it within like 10 seconds. It was really, really cool. So things like that are very fun, I think, is a great way to really promote usage for anything, in particular, any new technology we want to roll out to our firms. And yeah, it's definitely it's a challenge, but I think being fun about it is a great avenue of approach. We've got another question here to speak a bit more about analytics, and so I'm going to real quickly just jump back to the slide that shows some of the analytics that we have available. So all of the consumers of your content, all of the design teams across the globe that are utilizing UNIFI, all of their searches, all of what they download, all of their 5-star ratings on that content, that's going to continuously add over time to your own company analytics. And those company analytics are available to be, they all consolidate in this web application, our management portal, that company admins have access to today. And you can start to see all this information in a singular location, which is really, really valuable. So we're gathering this data today. We're starting to be able to visualize it, and then based on the visualization of this information, we can start to turn into knowledge and to say, hey, look at all this 1-star rated content. You know, we should probably go and evaluate it. Probably go QA it. Is it really poor quality? If it is, should we get rid of it, or should we update it? Starting to provide as much information to you as BIM management, as design technology staff, so that you have more information to turn into actionable knowledge and actionable tasks. Hopefully that answered your question there. Brian and Nancy, want to add anything to that?
Well, we've learned a tremendous amount from the analytics that we're able to pull out. It's refined our tags, it's refined our organization of libraries, it's refined how much content we've provided in a template and how we're delivering other things. It's confirmed usage for across the firm. It's shown us where our peak times are. It's just really been incredibly informative all across the board.
Yeah, it's been equally informative for our firm as well. You know, working with millions of pieces of content, being able to have users go in and see what's been used, and being able to track that and see what's being used is extremely valuable for me to ensure that I'm not overloading our library.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, it's an interesting topic, overloading the library. We see companies come into UNIFI and upload anywhere from 10 to 30,000 pieces of content, and their libraries very commonly reduce in size. As you start to see what's good, what's bad, what's being used, what's not being used, we just never really had a lot of analytics to be able to see that information before in the past. So it's very interesting to see how you know, we kind of consolidate and reduce the amount of content our users even have to utilize in our firms. So. Well, with that, we got one last question here. Okay, one more, and then we'll wrap here. So conceptually, large number of libraries or small numbers of libraries? That's a very good question, and library strategies are something that is a whole nother, you know, really the right library strategy for you as a firm is such a great question. But Nancy, why don't you go first? What's your thoughts on that?
Large number or small numbers, why choose? Have both. So the way we've organized our content is we have one collective library. We separate our imperial content from our metric content, but we have all of those files available as a firm-wide resource. Then we have a series of client-specific sub-libraries. Now, the content is not duplicated in those sub-libraries. It's just shared to those sub-libraries. So from a user standpoint, if someone wants to know what is available across the entire firm, they go to the big bucket. If they're working on a very specific client project, then they would go to the smaller bucket, because that automatically refines some of their searching, and it also allows the librarians for those teams to filter out and say, some of this content is not appropriate for this client, but this subset is. So we basically take both approaches, and we're not limited. We don't need to make a decision about do we need to have smaller library systems or a lot more. So the management of it is very flexible. The assignment of content is not restricted to being in one approach or the other. It's a shared system. So again, a single point of truth, single family. It's up to library management to decide if the content is appropriate and be able to subset it, both for search ease of use, but also for the statistics. So By having smaller library subsets, the teams there can get reporting just on the content of their own library. So they can see the content, they can see the use of it, and they're not looking at the analytics of it across the entire firm, which would not really be that informative to them as subsets, but it does allow them to get real user information of the group that's accessing it for their specific purpose. So we use both, big buckets and small buckets.
No, that's great. Have both. You don't need to choose. No, it's all based on those permissions, right? And that's completely customizable for you to kind of match your firm's workflow. Brian, anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, we follow virtually the same idea of this larger bucket and smaller buckets. You know, we have a fabrication shop, so we store all of our fabrication parts in there. So our users are able to actually just drag and drop those into the project. And then we've also got, you know, a mechanical equipment library for the mechanical equipment department. And then we have our plumbing groups. So it's all departmentalized into those smaller buckets that leach off of that larger bucket. And it's provided to be pretty successful thus far.
Well, that's great. I just want to thank our wonderful panelists, Nancy, Brian. You both have been, I want to thank you very much for taking your time in your busy schedules to share your knowledge with our audience today. And I'm sure they learned a lot from both of you. You guys are absolutely wonderful, so I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks for having us.
Thanks also to our audience for the great turnout today. We had, almost 60 different attendees here, so this was wonderful. And we'll be posting the webcast to our website if you'd like to share this with your colleagues. And we'll also be providing Nancy and Brian's contact info if you want to pick either of their brains any further on different questions you may have. And just want to say thank you again to everyone and have a great day.
Thanks a lot, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
You're very welcome. Take care, everyone.